Iran Daily Briefing, Monday, May 11, 2026. Iran has sent its formal response to the US peace proposal, and President Trump has already rejected it. Trump called Iran's terms, quote, totally unacceptable, posting that reaction on Truth Social on Sunday. The response passed through Pakistan, which has been serving as the go-between in these negotiations. What Iran is actually asking for, why Washington pushed back so hard, and what Netanyahu is now saying about the conditions for ending the war. That's where we start today. As of this Monday morning, the diplomatic channel between Washington and Tehran is under visible strain. Iran delivered its counterproposal to American mediators on Sunday. Within hours, Trump rejected it publicly. Oil markets moved on the news, more on that shortly. Two threads from previous episodes require an update before we go further. First, the Rubio-Qatar mediation channel. We've been tracking this since Friday, when Secretary Rubio met Qatar's Prime Minister in Miami to discuss the war. As of today, that thread has now gone 3 days without a readout or any follow-on reporting from either government. We are dropping it from active tracking until new reporting emerges. Second, yesterday's Look Ahead asked you to watch for any formal US response to the IRGC statements covered in Saturday's episode. We have no new reporting on that today. We're not carrying that thread forward. What we do have today, the substance of Iran's counterproposal, Trump's rejection, Netanyahu's stated conditions, the execution of a young Iranian man on espionage charges, a significant development on Nobel laureate Narges Mohammadi, and 2 tanker movements through the Strait of Hormuz worth noting. Here's today's episode. Iran's response to the US peace proposal is now on the table, and it has been rejected. On Sunday, May 10th, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif confirmed that Pakistan had received Iran's formal response and passed it to the United States. Iran's state news agency IRNA reported the same. Pakistan has been serving as the diplomatic go-between in these negotiations, as we've covered in prior episodes. What did Iran ask for? According to Iranian state media, Press TV and IREB, as reported by Middle East Eye, Tehran's counterproposal contained 3 core demands: full compensation for war damage, the lifting of all sanctions, and recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Each of those demands is significant on its own. Together, they represent a substantial distance from where US negotiators are understood to be positioned. Trump's reaction was immediate and public. He posted on Truth Social that Iran's response was, quote, totally unacceptable. That's a flat rejection, not a counter-offer, not a call for further talks, a rejection. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson responded by saying the United States continues to have what Tehran calls unreasonable demands in the negotiations. That framing is consistent with how Iranian officials have described the US position throughout this process. So both sides are publicly characterizing the other as the unreasonable party. That is where the diplomacy stands this morning. Now layer in the Israeli dimension. In a CBS News interview that aired over the weekend, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium must be, in his words, taken out, and that Iranian enrichment sites must be dismantled before the war can be considered over. Netanyahu framed this as a condition for concluding the conflict, not a preference, a condition. That position matters for the negotiations because it suggests Israel's definition of an acceptable end to the war goes beyond anything currently on the table between Washington and Tehran. Whether the Trump administration is aligned with Netanyahu's conditions or is pursuing a narrower agreement is not clear from today's reporting. One more dimension. Trump's 2-day visit to China. Al Jazeera and Al Monitor both report that Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping were expected to discuss Iran during that visit. Separately, Al Jazeera reports that US officials indicated Trump would likely apply pressure on Beijing over Chinese purchases of Iranian oil during the war. The Chinese Foreign Ministry, for its part, pushed back on Monday. Spokesperson Guo Jiakun called U.S. sanctions on China-based companies linked to Iran illegal and unilateral. That is three intersecting pressures in one story. A failed diplomatic exchange between Washington and Tehran, an Israeli government insisting on conditions that may exceed what any current proposal addresses, and a US-China trade argument running in parallel over Iranian oil. The oil markets registered all of it. According to Middle East Eye, citing late Sunday trading, Brent crude rose to $104,000 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate climbed to $98.51 a barrel by 23:36 GMT on Sunday, following Trump's rejection of Iran's response. These are point-in-time figures from late Sunday, not confirmed closing prices, but the direction of movement is clear. What to watch? Whether Pakistan issues any public statement about next steps in its mediating role. Islamabad confirmed receipt and transmission of Iran's response, but said nothing about what happens now. If Pakistan signals it is continuing to facilitate talks, that tells you the channel is still open. If it goes quiet, that tells you something different. Story 1. Narges Mohammadi. Released on bail. This is a significant development on a story our listeners have been following since early May. Narges Mohammadi, the Iranian Nobel Peace Prize laureate, awarded in 2023 while imprisoned for her campaign for women's rights and against the death penalty, has been released on bail and transferred to a hospital in Tehran. The timeline matters here. According to NPR, citing her foundation, Mohammadi had collapsed in prison more than a week before her transfer. France 24 reports she suffered 2 suspected heart attacks while in custody. Iranian authorities granted bail and she was moved to Tehran for urgent medical treatment, according to both BBC and France 24 reporting. She is 54 years old. She had been jailed for campaigning against Iran's clerical system, and she remained imprisoned even after receiving the Nobel Prize. BBC special correspondent Fergal Keane also noted in reporting today that Iranian authorities have imposed an internet ban during the ongoing conflict, relevant context for understanding how difficult it has been to get information out of the country in recent weeks. Mohammadi's release is on bail, not a full release. Her legal status remains unresolved. The medical situation, based on what's been reported, is serious. What to watch? Any update on her medical condition from the hospital in Tehran, and whether Iranian authorities move to revoke bail or impose new conditions once she is stabilized. Story 2. Irfan Shakurzadeh. Executed. Iran has executed a 29-year-old man named Irfan Shakurzadeh on charges of espionage. The Iranian judiciary's Mizan online website confirmed the execution. Iranian state-linked media, including Mizan and Mehr News Agency, reported that Shakurzadeh was convicted of cooperating with US intelligence and Israel's Mossad. Al-Monitor describes him as a postgraduate student from an elite Tehran university. The rights group Iran Human Rights Society said he was an aerospace engineering graduate who had been arrested in 2025 and alleged that his confession was coerced. What today's reporting confirms, Irfan Shakurzadeh was executed on espionage charges. The arrest, conviction and execution all took place in a compressed time frame following his 2025 arrest. The coercion allegation comes from a human rights organization, not from the Iranian judiciary. What to watch? Any response from human rights organizations with standing to investigate the case and whether international bodies, the UN, European governments, issue formal statements. Story 3. Tanker movements. Through the Strait of Hormuz. 2 tanker developments are worth flagging, and both require precise timestamps because neither is a Monday development. The first, the tanker Basra Energy, carrying approximately 2 million barrels of Upper Zakum crude loaded from an Abu Dhabi National Oil Company terminal, exited the Strait of Hormuz last Wednesday, May 6th, according to Kepler data cited by Middle East Eye. This is a Wednesday development. We are reporting it now because it is part of a larger pattern of movements through the strait worth tracking. The second is more recent. A very large crude carrier called the Agios Fenurios Bar, carrying approximately 2 million barrels of Iraqi crude bound for Vietnam, exited the Strait of Hormuz on Sunday, May 10th, with its tracker disabled. Middle East Eye reports the vessel had previously failed to transit the strait in at least 2 earlier attempts after loading Basra medium crude on April 17th. A ship exiting with its tracker disabled is notable. Automatic tracking systems on commercial vessels are standard. Disabling them is not routine. The intel does not state why the tracker was off, only that it was. As we covered in the May 8th episode, tanker transits through the strait have been contested throughout this conflict. These 2 exits are data points in that ongoing story, not a resolution of it. On a related note, the UK and France have announced they will co-host a meeting of more than 40 nations' defence ministers on Tuesday to discuss military plans to restore trade flows through the Strait of Hormuz. UK Defence Secretary John Healey and French Defence Minister Catherine Vautrin will co-chair that session. That meeting is tomorrow. We'll follow it. What to watch? The outcome of Tuesday's multinational defence ministers meeting in terms of any agreed framework or coalition structure for Strait of Hormuz protection. A meeting of 40-plus nations' defence ministers is significant. What it produces, if anything, is the question. We opened today with the Iran-Pakistan-US diplomatic exchange. Here is the complete picture now that you have the full context. Iran delivered its formal response to the US peace proposal to Pakistani mediators on Sunday, May 10th. Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif confirmed receipt. Iran's state news agency IRNA reported the same. According to Iranian state media, Press TV and IRIB, as reported by Middle East Eye, Iran's counter-proposal demanded full compensation for war damage, the lifting of all sanctions and recognition of Iranian sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz. Trump posted on Truth Social that the response was totally unacceptable. Iran's foreign ministry said the US continues to make unreasonable demands. No further steps in the negotiation have been reported as of this morning. 3 things to watch in the next 24 to 48 hours, each grounded in today's reporting. 1. Tuesday's multinational defence ministers meeting. The UK and France will co-host a session of more than 40 nations' defence ministers tomorrow, Tuesday, May 12th, focused on military options to restore shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. UK Defence Secretary John Healey and French Defence Minister Catherine Vautrin will chair it. Watch for any agreed framework, named coalition or concrete operational commitments to emerge from that session. 2. The Pakistan Channel. Islamabad confirmed it received and transmitted Iran's response to Washington. Trump rejected that response publicly. The question now is whether Pakistan continues to serve as mediator, steps back, or signals that a new phase of engagement is needed. Watch for any statement from Islamabad on next steps. 3. Trump in China. Trump's 2-day visit to China was expected to include discussions of Iran, including the question of Chinese oil purchases from Tehran during the war. Watch for any joint statement or any public Chinese response following those conversations. Today's episode covered Iran's rejected counter-proposal to the US peace offer, Trump's public dismissal of Tehran's terms, Netanyahu's stated conditions for ending the war, the bail release of Nobel laureate Narges Mohammadi following a medical emergency in prison, the execution of Irfan Shakurzadeh on espionage charges, 2 tanker transits through the Strait of Hormuz, and tomorrow's multinational defense ministers meeting. We'll be back Tuesday with the follow-up. For full written briefs and source-backed updates, check out the Iran Brief on Substack. Paid members can build multi-country monitoring across the countries they care about, with personalized briefings delivered automatically.